Yeah, so I will. I'll now hand over to Annie and let her tell you a bit more about good finance and also introduce social investment.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Lucy. And hi, everyone. Great to be here and lovely to see you all this morning. I'm just going to share my screen. Got a couple of slides. There we go. Can everyone see that okay? If you give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Yeah, brilliant. Fantastic. So yeah, hi everyone, great to be here today and thank you all so much for coming along this morning. As Lucy kind of mentioned, I'm here to give a bit of a quick intro to good finance and essentially a kind of what is social investment in 10 to 12 minutes, if I can. I will kind of whiz through these slides, but these will be provided to you after the event, so please don't worry about scribbling down notes or anything like that. And I guess the final thing to say is I'm still relatively new to the whole presenting thing. So if I start speaking very, very quickly, please do give me a wave or a shout, and I will make an effort to slow down on that. So yeah, that's me. I'm Annie. I'm the digital content project manager at Good Finance. So what is Good Finance? Good Finance is a collaborative project to help improve access to information on social investment for charities and social enterprises. So I guess the easiest way to put it is that our overall mission is to be the single trusted source of information on social investment for them. There's various ways we achieve this, but we kind of narrow it down to 3 core ways. So improving knowledge on social investment, that's what it is, what it can be used for, and the journey and process that it requires. The second one is enabling organisations to make informed decisions based on their needs and situation, kind of not on embedded attitudes. And thirdly, helping to connect organisations to the right investors to talk to based on shared values. I guess we do this in 2 core ways. So we've got the website, which has any number of completely free tools, resources, content, blogs, podcasts, videos, etc., etc. And then we've got the kind of offline activity via engagement with events, workshops, webinars, and all that good stuff. I guess one key thing to note is that this isn't a sales pitch. We're not here to sell social investment. For us, a good result is finding out it's not right for you as much as it is to find out it is right for you. We just want people to essentially be able to know about it, keep it in their back pocket should they need it in the future, but more importantly, not waste time if it's absolutely not for them. So moving on to the next slide. In terms of the role of social investment then, it doesn't matter if you're in the tip of the Highlands of Scotland or Land's End down in Cornwall, social investment has a role to play in tackling some key social issues across the UK. We know that now more than ever, charities and social enterprises in particular are dealing with some of the most challenging issues in the UK, with a few examples being housing, income, and kind of financial inclusion, particularly at the moment with the cost of living crisis. And so as it states on this slide here, social investment is the use of repayable finance to help an organisation to achieve a social purpose. And so what's really important to remember, it's not necessarily a thing in its own right, it's not its own entity, it's simply a tool to help you to achieve impact. Hence, I guess the title of this session, kind of using social investment to help you to tackle health inequality. Oh, sorry, skip back. Just a tiny little bit on some kind of social investment history and where it all started. So we had the financial crisis of 2008 and 2011. And I guess there's some compounded issues there between austerity, less income, public sector moving away from contracts because of that austerity. And then more recently, we've got the little issue of the global pandemic. So lots of organisations had to look at the way they provide services and how reliant they are on grant and fundraising, and social investment is just one of those ways that you can diversify that income. Oh, sorry. In terms of that financial crash and what does that mean, set against the background of increasing demand and uncertainty, organisations really had to have a look at their own resilience and sustainability, kind of what their income generation looks like and the revenue models that they're able to kind of put out there if they haven't already. And as a result of that, the funding and finance required to ensure their organisation can not only just survive but thrive during times of uncertainty. So how does social investment work? Very simply, charities and social enterprises might generate a surplus through trading activities, government contracts, grants and donations, or a combination of all or some of these. And this profit or surplus is then used to repay investors for that initial capital payment. I could go on, but luckily for me and you probably, there is a quick video that we have on this that explains it much better than I ever could.
Across the UK, charities and social enterprises like yours are tackling some of society's biggest problems. Maybe you've set up a coffee business to give people the skills to get back into work, or are running a nursery and using the profits to support local parents. Whatever your mission, you'll need money to help with cash flow, to grow your organisation, or to buy an asset like a new building. You might even need finance to kick-start your new venture. And that money could come from traditional grants or donations, or as a loan from your local bank. One option is to get that money from a social investor. That social investor could be an organisation or an individual, and you can borrow their money or offer them shares in your organisation. But what makes a social investor different? Well, they don't just want to see a return on their investment. They want to see their money being used for good, helping you to keep delivering your social mission. Sound good? To see if it's right for you, check out goodfinance.org.uk.
There's nothing more powerful than you.
Okay, so hopefully that gave a bit of a very basic kind of intro to what it is, how it works, in a much better way than kind of me just droning on about that. So now we'll move on to a very important aspect here. So that's your financial toolkit. And so what's really important is to think about all of these aspects and opportunities, and to note that social investment is not a replacement for grants. Rather, they would sit alongside each other as tools kind of in that financial toolkit. Here we've kind of put examples such as donations and fundraising, borrowing from banks, delivering on contracts, social investment, and there are lots of other kind of aspects in there as well. In terms of key considerations when you're exploring whether it's right for you, there's kind of 3 steps to think about in this process. So first of all, purpose. What do you need the money for? And within purpose, we often talk about the 4 pillars of purpose. So do you want to buy an asset? Do you need the money to maintain cash flow, particularly relevant for those with an outcomes-based contract perhaps, or payment by results model? Do you need to kickstart your business? Now, we do avoid the term startup here. I guess we like to say never, but often you have to have a kind of proof of concept to secure social investment. So it's not always used to inject cash into your kind of startup model of your business. And then finally, we've got growth and innovation, where you've done the proof of concept, and are looking to kind of ramp up and scale the delivery of the impact that you create for your community. Number 2, we've got repayment. So how are you going to pay it back? Is there an income stream with surplus? This could range from anything from government contracts, rental income, membership fees, and even donations or fundraising. Social investors will consider that within your kind of application as well. And finally, we've got number 3. So what social impact will you create? And this is perhaps the part that differentiates social investors from the mainstream. They will want to know the impact you're going to create, and you'll need to tell them or share with them your impact story. Like the numbers essentially. So who's going to benefit, what outcomes will you create, and put very simply, what difference will the money that you're borrowing make in the long run? And there's a kind of a fact in the corner there that 85% of the social investors that we list on our investor directory are in fact social enterprises or charities themselves. So yeah, I think that's quite interesting and a good point to keep in mind when exploring social investment. In terms of the different types of social investment, what tends to happen is people try and get from A to B very, very quickly. Like, okay, I could do with some money, show me the money, essentially. But actually, there's quite a lot of work to be done in the middle to make sure that you get the type of social investment and the provider that is most aligned with your organisation. You can divide this into two pieces, so one being debt or loans and the other being equity or shares. So some social enterprises and charities are actually unable to give away equity or don't have shares, so can only have access to debt lending. There's also many other types of social investment and terms. As Lucy mentioned, lots of jargon in the social investment sector. We've got blended finance, we've got quasi equity or crazy equity, some people call it. There's lots of that about, and hopefully we'll either get a link in the chat or we'll make sure we share the link to our jargon buster after this session, so you can find out more about what these mean. There's also two ways of getting social investment. So that's from an organisation, a specialist social investment firm, or a social bank. And then there's also borrowing from individuals, which might look more like kind of your crowdfunding models, your community shares, or kind of previously social investment tax relief. But unfortunately, that has now closed. There's so much more information on the Good Finance website about the types of social investment, so please do head there to the Understanding Investment tab if you'd like to learn more. And who are the funders then? So finally, before we move on to some quick examples, we look at the kind of sliding scale along the bottom there. So to the right, you've got traditional investment through kind of high street banks, and their main concern is getting their money back. It's more of a financial proposition than anything else. Towards the left-hand side of the scale, you've got philanthropic money. So grant-making institutions, foundations, etc. They're not expecting their capital back. They're expecting social outcomes. They want to know about the impact that money is going to make. Social investment, we like to say, sits somewhere in the middle. It needs to get money back with interest so it can be recycled and lent again to another organisation. But a social investment investor really cares about the difference that that money will make to the communities that you're serving. I'm conscious of time, and I know the kind of main event is hearing from Peter about his experiences, but I will just quickly run through a couple of other case studies that kind of demonstrate how social investment has been used to tackle health inequalities in the UK. So firstly, we've got one here, which is the Freedom Foundation. These guys focus on mental health issues in children and young people, with a particular focus on the kind of more recent negative impacts of social media. How they make their revenue, so their kind of income stream, is through delivering dance and music programs in schools and community settings, and these are usually funded through partnerships. And they use social investment to extend those activities, okay, so to allow them to reach more children and offer more of their services, and essentially just scale up their services. In terms of the key stats, so the loan duration of the loan they took was 5 years. The cost of capital, so the interest rate they were charged was 6.5%, and they had a total investment amount of £79,970. Important to note, this was blended finance, so unfortunately don't have the breakdown here, but at least some of that £79,000 would have been grant, so not needing to pay that back. Next up, we've got Central YMCA. So some of you might have heard of these guys. They provide fitness and education training via their health and wellbeing venues. Due to various challenges to their sector in particular presented by the pandemic, they had to diversify quite a few of their income streams at pace, essentially so they didn't affect the deliverability of their programs. They use social investment to actually refinance an existing loan. So this brought down their monthly repayments and enabled them to continue to support those vulnerable communities moving forward. Again, the key stats here, so they had a much longer loan duration of 25 years and quite a significantly lower cost of capital rate or interest rate of 2.41%. But the total investment amount was £4 million, and that was secured against a building. And the final one we have here is Nottingham Council Service. And as you might imagine, they are a counselling service to individuals in Nottingham. Interestingly, they actually were previously grant reliant, so wholly kind of reliant on grants and foundations giving them money to fund different projects. But when that funding suddenly became unavailable a couple of years ago, they took on £30,000 in social investment to kind of bridge that gap brought about by a reduction of the availability of grant. And again, you've got the key stats in the corner there. So their loan duration was over 3 years with a cost of capital rate of 6.5%, and they borrowed £30,000 in total. And that was in an unsecured loan, so they didn't have anything to secure against that. And that was the end of my slideshow. I won't run through these 7 lessons learned because I think we're a bit short on time, but they will be included in the slides provided to you, just kind of to answer some key FAQs that we get from time to time. And I will stop sharing my screen and back over to you, Lucy, I think.
I think we've got a video of hearing from a peer first, Annie.
Absolutely, sorry, forgot it was
all right. That's all right.
Yeah,
we actually are in reasonable time because that was due at 10:25. So don't feel that you've got to rush too much. There was very interesting stuff there, I thought, and stuff too. That I've got some questions about when it comes round to questions like how do you get blended finance versus loans, interest rates, things like that, because obviously interest rates very high at the minute, and is social finance actually affordable? But anyway, those are some questions maybe for later on. But let's first of all hear from a video peer and then hear from a real life peer in the form of Peter afterwards.
Brilliant, thank you, Lucy. Yeah, let me just share my screen, and I won't introduce IntraQuest. I think he does a very good job himself, but just essentially this is from a peer that spoke at one of our in-person Let's Talk Good Finance events a couple of years ago.
My name is Neil Lewis. I work for a small company that's based in Oldham, just outside Manchester, called IntraQuest. So my 2 business partners are Karen Keats and Jennifer Westwood. Their background is primarily in therapy and therapeutic interventions, working with really challenging individuals. I wanted to sort of share with you some of the history and the story behind IntraQuest, the beginnings of IntraQuest, because it actually has caused us some challenges. Our past experiences have made it really difficult for us to seek any financial support. Karen has a criminal record, a long criminal record. She hasn't offended for over 17 years. She's also had substance misuse issues. There's been financial difficulties. This is a person who has turned her life around now and wants to help others turn their life around. But a lot of investors and banks won't come near us because of those issues that we've had. On the one hand, public services and local authorities absolutely love the fact that we're real and we've got real experiences and real stories to tell, and yet a lot of businesses and investors wouldn't. And herein lies the issue for us. We also have a relatively new business model. There aren't a lot of therapeutic organisations, and there are even less therapeutic learning organisations that look at giving therapeutic techniques, accessible therapeutic techniques, to professionals. So what we found was there wasn't kind of a book out there or a template out there for us to create our organisation. We were pretty much starting from scratch. So that was something that caused us issues. We had to reach out to lots of different people to get help and support. Definitely one of our challenges. About 2 years ago, we were busting out of the tiny little office that we had. We had more and more referrals coming through. We needed to grow our business. We needed to make our services more accessible. The bank wouldn't help us because of the challenges that Karen had in the past. No banks would actually help us. I didn't really get very far with traditional investors because as soon as we kind of called out the difficult histories, the door was kind of closed in our faces. We reached out to the Business Growth Hub to see if they could give us any advice whatsoever, and they very kindly referred us to Key Fund. I did some research on Key Fund, and what I found was that as a funding stream, it was very much about helping organisations that couldn't get investment elsewhere. All you needed was an absolutely kick-ass business plan to prove that you were a viable business, and that was it. So of course, I'm a learning professional, I'm an ideas person, I'm creative. We're passionate, that's what we do. But you know what? Now all of a sudden, we've got to start engaging some commercial acumen. I'm so glad it forced us into that space, because my first sort of top tip, my key learning, if you like, from going down the funding journey is getting that business plan absolutely nailed and sticking to it. Now, it might seem like a really simple thing, but you know what? It's something that as innovators, as creators, as leaders of a business, we can sometimes step away from it. We get pulled in the way that passion takes us. We certainly were. Going back to basics and really getting that business plan nailed helped us so much. It helped me understand exactly how much money we needed, how we were going to build the business, how we were going to invest in the business. To grow and to reach the market that we wanted to, we needed help. And I'm really glad that Key Fund offered to support us on the back of our business plan. But actually, we were only going for a loan, and Key Fund very kindly offered us a small grant as well. So based on the back of our business plan and seeing the value that we added socially. What I will say about working with Key Fund was it was a great process. We were allocated a client manager really quickly who was very, very supportive. He was very, very helpful in terms of pulling our plan together and very complimentary about it when it was done. The second one I want to talk to you about just briefly is contingency planning. So as a community interest company, we've reached out to lots of different places for funding. Our Parents Network project that we do in Oldham to try and decrease the social isolation has been funded by the People's Health Trust. We pulled together a fantastic plan. We had a referral pipeline set up with a local frontline public service organisation. And then about a month after we got our first funding amount and we were just getting the project going, that local organisation that was our referral pipeline was disbanded and moved out of the area. We've managed to pull it back now, and it's been doing really, really well. We've had to completely find our own referral pipelines, do our own marketing, because none of that's being done for us anymore. But you know what? It worked, but it was painful at the time. So if there are any dependencies, and particularly single points of dependency in your project, how can you contingency plan for them would be my advice to you, just based on my own learning. And the final thing that the big learning for me has been to tap into your network and ask for support. And I guess just harking back to Karen's challenges when she started, to the challenges of starting your own business, and to the challenges that we faced just this year as a business. We like this quote from C.S. Lewis that hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny. So you're not alone, you're not out there on your own. There's plenty of people that can support you. Tap into that network. I wish you all the very best of luck with your enterprises, and if any of you would like any help or advice or anything at all, please do get in touch with me.
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. That was IntraQuest with some I thought interesting learnings and kind of reflections on their experience. So
yeah, I think there were some great messages there, and one of them that really I took away from that was you're not alone. There's a network of support there, and certainly when I went for social investment, that was something that I found really helpful. It wasn't like you have to have that business plan, all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. There is someone there to help you with all of that stuff and help you through the process. So I think that's a really important thing, because sometimes you think it's like when you go to the bank, you need to have got yourself in order, but they'll help you get yourself in order, if you like. Anyway. So we now move on to Peter, who has joined us. He's one of our social enterprise mark holders. They're based over in East Anglia, and they help people tackle mental health issues and have been, I think, around for quite some time, actually. Peter has been director for a little while, but he's been with the organisation for quite some time before that, in a different role as a counsellor and in other roles, I think. So he has the story of social investment and was intimately involved in in that process. So it's great to hear from you, and thanks for joining us, Peter, and I'll hand straight over to you now.
Hello everyone. Forgive me, I've got a little bit of a cold. Doesn't seem to want to leave me, but I'm fine. So forgive me for my nasally voice today. So yes, I am the Managing Director at MTCIC. Sue J, our founding director, started the company in 2011. We are a community interest company. So again, not for profit. Anything that we make as a profit, we try to reinvest in our local area. I'll tell you a little bit about what we do. We are a counselling organisation. We provide psychological therapies to people across East Anglia. We also offer what's classed as a low-cost therapy for people who are on low income. There are factors to that, but I'll come to that in a bit. Our services extend from supporting anyone from 5 years all the way up to people in their 90s, and we currently do have a couple of people that were being seen by us who are in their 90s. We have grown as a company, and we've been able to support different organisations as well. We have a group of qualified counsellors and CBT therapists who work with a wide range of clients. Part of our identity, if you like, was that we wanted to be able to support counsellors who are on training. So people that wanted to become qualified and have to go on to placements and have those real life, real time sessions with clients so they can become qualified. We try to offer up to 20 placements at any given time to counsellors or trainee counsellors to help them work towards their qualification and beyond to their accreditation. That is part of who we are. That is part of the investment that we have in people. Before we got the loan, before we applied for the loan, we were in serviced premises, and we were doing okay. I guess a good problem for a company is when you start to grow and you start to become busier, and that is what started to happen for us. The busier we became, the more rooms we needed to rent, and therefore our costs, if you like, were increasing all the time. We started having conversations about perhaps moving and having premises of our own, and that, you know, we were looking at things like, would that actually be more beneficial for us from a financial point of view? There's a lot to consider, obviously, before you make that decision. When we started looking for other premises, it did become clear that we needed some sort of investment in us for us to be able to do that. After lots of in-house conversations about where would we go, how much do we need, what is it that we're actually looking for, and still having lots of unanswered questions, we decided, the decision was made to approach, it was the big issue actually that gave us our loan in the end. But I think as an experience, one of the nice experiences that we came away from was we knew that we didn't have all the answers. And when you apply for a loan, yes, there's lots of tick boxes. And sometimes it may feel quite daunting because there you are with a vision, needing investment, trying to apply for a loan, and it's kind of cold. You don't have a relationship with somebody that you can talk to about your ideas, about, you know, what we need to do, blah, blah, blah. The experience we had with the social enterprise wasn't like that. We were appointed an individual, somebody that was there for us, someone that actually came to our premises where we were, someone who spent time with us talking about our vision, if you like, talked us through different steps, helped us understand what it was that we actually were trying to achieve. And from a financial point, how much we needed to borrow. Because, you know, there are lots of things to consider. When Annie was talking and showing us the slides about purpose and, you know, the repayment and the impact, that was part of the process. We knew the purpose for the loan was to find premises of our own, but then the repayment side of things, obviously we need to have a sustainability. We need to be able to afford to repay the loan. And you've got to consider, really sit down and think about that impact as well. You know, you're having investment in your own company, but you're still having to repay that. Can you afford to repay that? What is the figure that you can repay? You know, and to have somebody to talk all these issues through was really, really helpful. The impact that it had, we are now and have been for several years in our new premises. The loan has helped us move forward with our vision, and yet we still haven't lost our identity. We know who we are. We know what we're trying to do. The premises, the loan, and then the premises have allowed us to become very established within the wellbeing service as a counselling service within the Norfolk and Suffolk Foundation Trust. We're now a partner with them and have been for several years now. We have other organisations that we're helping to support. The Fisherman's Mission, we have a programme with them that we run out to try and support and promote the mental health and well-being of fishermen in Norfolk and Suffolk, and we're actually looking at expanding that into Essex. There is an organisation called Suffolk Carers Matter, so people within, you know, that are having to care for people, loved ones, family members within their own homes that feel isolated and cut off. We offer free counselling sessions to those carers so they actually have somebody that they can turn to and talk to. Without the loan and without somebody actually investing not just money but time to understand who we are, what we're trying to do and where we want it to go, without that we wouldn't be doing what we're doing now. And yes, there's lots of thoughts, like I was saying, lots of thought about repaying the loan. Know why you want the loan. Know that you can repay the loan. Be certain of who you are. Don't lose sight of your identity. And one of the lovely things that we found here was nobody was trying to tell us what we needed to do. Nobody told us. They just asked us. And that's a massive difference. So yes, the loan has really benefited us, and we're very grateful for it. And I guess that's about us.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much, Peter. And I think that message of don't lose sight of your identity is really key. Certainly that was my experience when I was talking to Big Issue Invest. They wanted you to keep your identity and to understand your business, which is slightly different to if you go to a grant funder who've got their own agendas, their own tick boxes. And obviously there's some very good grant funders out there that are perhaps a little bit more flexible. But one of the benefits, obviously, of social finance is that it understands your business and it isn't driven by, you know, the funders' agendas rather than the business that's applying for the money. So that's a very useful message, I think, to get over. So now I'd like to ask whether people have any questions. Feel free to just either put your hand up or just unmute yourself. And if everyone's sort of stunned, we've got a few questions up our sleeves, including the commonly asked questions that Annie flicked up earlier on. So has anyone got any thoughts?
Paul has his hand up, Lucy.
Oh yes, sorry Paul, I couldn't see that. Yeah, go ahead Paul.
Okay. I guess a couple of things. So we're an early stage startup technically as a social enterprise, and so we're just if you like, trying to put a business case together for funding. And I think we have multiple options ahead of us in terms of which choice or which path we could pursue with regard to funding, which in itself makes it a little bit challenging knowing which is the right direction to go down. But I just wondered, on the loan front, are there loans that work in the principle of you not having to necessarily repay immediately, you know, that you have a year's grace, if you like, if you took a loan approach before you paid, so that you've got that opportunity of generating revenues that then can be utilized to support repayment of the loan. I mean, is that a model out there? And then the other bit, I guess, is the more explicit assistance I think we could need and some financial support to help with is actually that building out of that business plan and going through that first stage to then perhaps get the more substantive sums that we need. And I find it quite beguiling looking at all the different sources of potential support out there. It's just so much, it's almost a bit overwhelming. So I'm not sure, again, I think probably the good finance is a good place to start, actually, having been introduced to that today.
Yeah, over to you, Annie, for that one.
Yeah, great. So I'll answer your first question. So in terms of, is there like a grace period? Obviously I have to kind of cop out or caveat with that not every investor will offer the same product, so it really does depend per organization, and that is why we always say to kind of shop around to make sure that you find a social investment that works for you, because as you say just then, there are so many out there, and so it's kind of we like to say, you know, you can afford to be a bit choosy, but absolutely that is an option that's out there. I'm not actually sure of the name of it, so that's some homework for me, but we've got lots of case studies and examples of organizations that kind of within their negotiation stages will kind of borrow a set amount with a repayment date that starts, say, a year or even 2 or 3 years into the future, just to allow that kind of initial startup phase to get going and really kind of kickstart, I suppose. So yeah, absolutely. And in fact, what I can do is try and find some case studies to include in the email that Sophie will send around after this event, if that's helpful as well.
Brilliant. Yes. Just a quick question, just a quick clarification on that. Presumably, though, those are based on secured loans as opposed to unsecured. Would that be correct, or?
So I have to have a look. I suppose logically they're more likely to be secured loans just because of the risk factor, but I will have a look. I'm sure there may well be an unsecured loan example, particularly if it's for perhaps a slightly smaller amount. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but it's not something that I've kind of looked into recently, so it's definitely something I'll have a look at and get back to you on, if that's okay. And was the second question for me as well? Sorry,
There's a question here from Amy. As well as social value, how much do you integrate environmental / sustainable values?
Okay, so it's how much do you integrate environment? So I assume that's in terms of demonstrating social impact to the social investor. Is that I'll answer it like that. If I've got the wrong end of the stick, please do interrupt. But yeah, I think in terms of demonstrating that social impact to your investor, environmental and sustainable values are absolutely included in that. There might be some kind of social impact measurement tools that are particularly kind of targeted at ESG, for want of a better word, kind of values and kind of objectives, but within so at Good Finance we have a tool called the Outcomes Matrix, and this kind of allows you to go through the tool in 4 quick and easy steps. Kind of choose the area you work in, you choose your outcomes and indicators, and then you choose the who's going to benefit, essentially, so your beneficiaries. But within those outcomes and indicators, there's lots of environmental kind of benefits and sustainability kind of factors that you can add to your matrix, and then at the end, when you download it, you get kind of Excel spreadsheet that you can then just kind of hand over to an investor, which is in a language that they understand as well, and kind of presented in a way that they can take and kind of get going with straight away. So yeah, in terms of environmental and sustainable values, they're absolutely integrated kind of within social impact, and different investors will have different priorities. So it might be that one investor is particularly focused on that. Can you send a link? I think Abdullah has kindly just popped it in the chat above your message. So yeah, please do check that out.
Another thing to say is that certainly in the case of Big Issue Invest and maybe some of the other social investors having the social enterprise mark, because we help to articulate social value as part of the process of assessment. So that's another thing to consider, because obviously we can help a bit with that, certainly for some of the smaller organisations who can find it a bit daunting, all this social impact and social value reporting when you're just trying to get on with your day-to-day job. Okay, do we have any other questions from other attendees other than ourselves?
I've just got another thought, actually. I mean, one of the other challenges slightly that we're faced with our business proposition and looking at the matrix that's we've just had a link provided to us, is that we actually cover so many different themes. And so one of the problems is and this is one of our challenges with going through funding as well, is that a lot of the funds tend to be very thematically organized, and we're actually trying to address a broader opportunity around social development and social impact, and so we have a difficulty in aligning with what's been asked, you know, straight out of the box, that funders, they tend to sort of try and pigeonhole you, don't you, and then you're sort of into a trap, and that's where you then start to lose a bit of your own identity in that, because you're then trying to mold yourself to what they want, when in actual fact that's not what you're trying to do. So I think there's something about where organizations like ours can go to get that assistance, where we're very much more general, and our impact could actually be extremely broad and very significant across a wide number of different things. But then where do we have that first conversation of saying, this is what we're trying to do and this is the support we need to try to do it, you know? So again, it's sort of a little bit unique, but yeah.
Oh, sorry, you go, Lisa.
Yeah, sorry, I mean, just from my experience of my first attempts at getting social investment, talk to as many as you can, because you just can get some free help, and also you'll get a bit of a feel for their approach to that. I have to say, because we got a loan that was agreed with BI, with Big Issue Invest, they were really like quite relaxed compared to some of the other social investors. But I'll let Annie give the official version.
No, it's always good to draw on experiences. But the only thing I was going to add is, yeah, we've spoke to someone before who said, they put it as kind of, you have to kiss a lot of social investment frogs before you find your social investment prince. So definitely go out there and speak to as many as you can. Like you say, get free advice, have a chat with them. They might be able to point you in the direction of someone who can help if they can't. And one of the best ways to do this is via a fund wrapper tool that we have on our website. Hopefully Abdullah will be able to pop the link in the chat, but it's basically over 150 investors, but crucially in your case, Paul, also their funds. So you'll be able to see who's offering kind of the more general, I suppose, growth accelerator funds as opposed to thematic funds, and maybe start with those in the first instance.
I guess we could ask Peter how they decided on Big Issue Invest, and how many frogs did you kiss?
Yeah, we kissed a few. The thing with the Big Issue, they seem to understand us. And that was very, very important to us. Paul, your question about secured or unsecured, I can tell you our loan was unsecured, but we started, as soon as we received the loan, we started paying it. We didn't have a defer, for 12 months type thing. So whether that helped them make that decision, but again, that was also part of our process, part of our thinking when we were applying for the loan. It was quite attractive to know that the loan was unsecured, but there are so many, and you do need to take your time and look without, I would say, without compromise on your own values, your own identity, what it is that you're doing. But there's always compromises to be had.
Yeah, I think we when we talked to Big Issue Invest, ours was an unsecured loan. I mean, we never ended up taking it up, but ours was an unsecured loan, and I think we had a payment holiday of at least a year. But we were an established social enterprise, so there's all different concoctions, and also it's not just interest rates, there's a setup fee as well that you have to take into account. And I was just going to ask Annie, because that's the one I'm dying to ask about, interest rates actually at the moment, because obviously social finance isn't cheap due to the fact that they're kind of passing on the interest from whoever it is that's given them the money in the first place, the original investor, and so what is the situation with regards to the affordability of social investment at this point in time?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. And obviously the kind of turbulence of recent times means that if you've secured social investment within the last 5 years and you opted for a fixed rate as opposed to a variable rate, that was probably a good call. But what I will say is that, yeah, if it's unaffordable, it's unaffordable. I think social investors, what's different about them is that they do not want to invest into you if you cannot afford it. That is not good for anyone. No one's a winner. If a social investor wants to invest in you, they want you to succeed. And so, it's really part of like having those open conversations from the start about affordability and what that means for you and your organization with your social investors, so as not to waste anyone's time or get further down the line and realize it's not as kind of affordable as you may have thought. In terms of the interest rates, we've seen some lower interest rates in recent times than they have been. That I think the sector, there's been a big demand for more patient capital, so longer loan terms, and more affordable, so lower cost of capital. But also this kind of focus on blended finance, I think, is really important. And so I think to Paul's point earlier as well, often when you get blended finance, you'll get part grant, part loan. And I know, Lucy, you had a question about how you kind of negotiate that. But again, I think it depends as per each social investor, but they will kind of suggest what they think is right for you. And it might be that you get that grant in the first instance as a big block of money, and then the loan at a later date. So then that's another way of kind of navigating needing cash early on and not wanting to make those repayments from the offset, essentially. But yeah, again, it's just a case of, I think, really doing your research on social investors. Have a look at our case study collection. We've got over 100 listed on the Good Finance website now, and every single one has to include the cost of capital rate that was charged. So you'll be able to see the kind of ballpark region of what different social investors can offer. But obviously this is, I have to caveat that with that each individual circumstance is different. So those rates will vary. But the only other thing I'd say on the matter is that we do have a cost of capital calculator on the Good Finance website as well. And so when you're kind of going out there and talking to social investors, they might give you these numbers, and you can put them into our interactive tool, and it will give you, so you put in both the amount you're looking to borrow, the interest rate, the cost of capital that they're looking to charge you, and any upfront costs, as Lucy mentioned. And what it will do is give you a monthly breakdown, so what your monthly repayments will look like, and an overall cost of social investment. So you can see, okay, well, I'm only borrowing £20,000, but it's going to cost me in the long run £28,000 because the cost of capital is X. So yeah, that's a really good tool to really, I think, help you see it on paper and in front of you as to the true cost of social investment.
That's great, thank you, Annie. Any last questions from the floor? Now is your chance.
I will pop my email in the chat, so if anyone wants to reach out afterwards and talk anything that's been mentioned through or anything else in more detail, please do let me know.
Of course, we'll be sending out slides. You know, there's some really useful links there. Are you sending out all of those links as well? Because some people might not have caught them in the chat. Annie, it'd be good just to circulate all of those, especially that calculator. That sounds really good, because I know my maths isn't absolutely brilliant, even though Rishi Sunak wants us all to be brilliant mathematicians. You know, that's one of the challenges, I think, of going to the bank, or going to an investor. It's like, oh, that's that interest rate, and you say, what does that actually mean? So there's some really good tools there that Good Finance have developed. So, you know, if you are interested, just have a look at those. I think probably we're nearly finished then with this. I hope that you've all enjoyed this session. I found it really interesting. Hear certainly direct from the peers. That was particularly interesting to hear the stories, and also to sort of compare notes, because, as I say, I often talk about social impact investment, and it's always good to hear straight from people. I know it is a daunting thing, but you know, it is that out there for all of those reasons that Annie set out in her presentation. So I hope it's given you some food for thought. All that remains now is for me to thank our guest speaker. That was really great to hear from MITB and the experience that Peter's had over the period, and also obviously to Annie and the social finance team, and to Sophie, who went through quite a lot to design this process and make sure that we covered off what I think was a really insightful hour. So go back to your businesses now and have a little think about, you know, whether or not you want to go ahead. If you don't, that's good too. So goodbye